Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. This week is Raw Feeders Week, and for those who follow this channel, you know how much I love raw food and people who feed their pets raw food. Since going vegan, I do wish there was an alternative, but at least I'm not contributing to that. So there's a lot of misconceptions about raw food, and I have an entire presentation on it that I do at businesses and local places. So if you do want more information, I would suggest coming to that because there's a lot more information that I'm going to cover here. Hello. And this is kind of some of the important facts that you should know, just in case you're on the fence about it, or if you're recently switched and you're wondering how it's going to go for your pet. There we go. In focus. So there's a couple main arguments against raw food, and I'm going to go through them and explain to you why these aren't really the case. I am a raw feeder. Most people know that about me. Kaya's been on a few different ones, but she's always had a sensitive stomach. But compared to how she did on kibble, it's not even a comparison. So the first is bacterial contamination. And a lot of people think because the meat is raw, it's going to have all this unhealthy bacteria in it. They can get, salmonella and listeria and all of this other bacteria. But if it's handled properly, then by you and the facility that you get it from, then there isn't really an issue with that. The best raw food companies do what's called batch testing, which is they take a small portion of each batch of meat or meat mixture. Sometimes it's mixed with fruits and vegetables and oils and stuff. They take a bit of each batch and test it for all the different bacterias to see if anything's wrong with it before they're allowed to ship it out. So oftentimes the quality is a lot higher because quite often kibble isn't tested in the same way. Second, bacterial contamination causing recall. It's actually way more common in dry food and canned food, quite often because they're left to sit on the shelf for a lot longer. And sometimes, I've had this happen actually with a bag of kibble that I had. It's great that the bags are supposed to last, a month or two, but once you open the bag, unless it's in a completely sealed container, and sometimes even in that case, once the air gets in or moisture gets in, the bottom of the bag of kibble starts to get moldy. And I have seen dogs get sick because of this. In canned food, usually there was something wrong with the can, it got dented or some air got in, and when you open it, it's already smells kind of strange. If your animal is smaller and they don't eat a whole can per meal, then you have to take that part out and put it in a sealed container, or else it will go bad. But recalls are much more common in those foods because they are left to sit out longer. Typically with raw food, it's vacuum sealed in a refrigerator or freezer. So that's typically, if there is any bacteria, which most of the time there isn't, it's killed off because of the cold temperatures. If there does happen to be, and all foods have bacteria, if some bacteria gets through, any healthy dog can handle the amount of bacteria that's in a normal batch of food. We can eat foods from the grocery store, fruits and vegetables, that sometimes have bacteria on them too. Their intestinal system is so strong, dogs and cats in general, that they can process the food no problem. If they've just had something like parasites, then maybe giving them smaller portions will be easier for them to digest, or adding some digestive aids would help a lot too. Second main argument is that dogs and cats cannot digest raw food. While dogs and cats are descended from wild ancestors, they used to eat entire carcasses. So this includes hair, bones, teeth, joints, eyes, everything. So if you're worried that your dog or cat can't digest the raw meat mixture, it's highly unlikely that they won't be able to digest it. The only time I would be concerned is if the animal's really, really old or sick. Transitioning them at the time where they're already weak is not a good idea. Transitioning them when they're healthy is the best option. Many times, if the intestinal system is weak, so if they have something like IBD or they've been vomiting recently, you want to fix that first before you transition them, because it makes it a more positive experience for them emotionally, but physically their body will be able to handle it better. Third, it's not nutritionally balanced because it's all meat. Raw diets are not all meat. And most people who feed their pets raw know this, but in case you were wondering, in dogs it's supposed to be 75 to 25. So 75% meat, and this includes offal, which is the organs and things like that, bone, tissue, all of that. The 25% is supposed to be fruits, vegetables, antioxidants, fiber, all of that stuff. So it's not that they're getting, like a steak and say, okay, there's your dinner. It's making sure they have all the necessary vitamins and minerals in the food. Most pet food companies sell a basic model, which is just the meat, and then you can add what they need to it, which if your dog has a lot of medications or specific needs, like if they have arthritis or something, it's better to start with the base one and add what they need. But if your pet is healthy, you can go with the mixed one because it has all those necessary things in it. So for example, Kaya's food already has, blueberries, kale, all these other fruits and vegetables mixed in, and it means I don't have to add those every time. I still add omega-3s and some digestive aids if she has upsets. She's still adjusting. I switched her about a month ago to her new one. Her digestion has been quite rough for the last, before I switched it, but it's doing a lot better now. So hopefully this is the last time I'll have to switch it. Cats are 88% meat, offal, bones, organs, tissue, that kind of stuff, and 12% fruits and vegetables. Cats are not supposed to digest a lot of fruits, vegetables, and grains just because they are obligate carnivores. Their body is designed to eat meat in the same way that dogs' bodies are, because they do have the canine teeth, and their mouth is designed and their intestinal system is designed to eat meat. If you are switching to a new raw food or switching from kibble to raw, most people say do half and half till their body adjusts, but often because it's half cooked and half uncooked, their intestinal system has a hard time processing because it's trying to do both things at the same time, process the cooked food and process the uncooked food. So my suggestion is take them off the kibble, and I'm not a vet, so don't take this for the final opinion when you make up your mind, but what I did with Kaya, I took her off the kibble and I gave her half a meal of the raw, and I gave her 4 small ones until her body got used to it, and then I switched her to 2, breakfast and dinner. Excuse me. But when you're switching to a new company, there's a couple of things you want to look for, and you do want to be able to call them and ask them questions. So if their customer service is really bad, or they can't answer your questions directly, they're probably not the best company to go with. But what you want is locally sourced meat, because the further it has to travel, not only the older it is and the more likely it could get contaminated, but the longer it's been sitting out. So, there's also pollutants and things like that if it's in a truck or something like that to get to where you're picking it up from, then it also has a bigger impact on the environment the further it has to travel. So think about that, because Ontario makes quite a bit of meat and meat products because we do have a lot of farms. So if you are going raw, try to go locally sourced instead of many of the big raw food companies from the States, because the local raw food companies will do a lot better if we support them rather than supporting the big ones from the States. You want to make sure that the facility that processes the meat is federally inspected. and not just provincially inspected, but federally inspected, because they do a very good job of making sure things like bacteria don't get into it, or whoops, someone spilled this into the vat, that kind of thing. And they check the packaging, the processing, all of that, because ultimately it's about your pet's safety and you don't want anything to happen. So the higher the safety standards of the facility that you're buying it from, the safer your pet will be. And some results, if you haven't seen Dog Cancer Series by Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib, I highly suggest it. They talk a lot about raw food. They interviewed some of the world's top pet nutritionists and scientists, so I highly suggest watching it. These are some of the highlights from the studies, but again, if you want more information about raw pet food, I do have a 2-hour presentation on it. So if you have somewhere that you want to go see it, I can set it up to come there and do it for you. So they tested a lot of before and after. So they had the dog on kibble. They did a bunch of tests on them, looking for genetic markers, measures of inflammation in the body, and then they switched them to raw. And then, of course, they had the opposite, raw to kibble, and then the two controls, kibble to kibble and raw to raw, just to test the difference. What they noticed is in the kibble to raw group, there was actually a decrease in inflammation, and this is measured by homocysteine in the study that they did. There's a decrease in inflammation, and usually inflammation leads up to disease, so most diseases in the body don't happen if there isn't any inflammation, because that's a sign that the immune system is responding to it. They also noticed a decrease in genetic disease markers, meaning that not only are the dogs healthier on the outside, but the physical structure of their genes has improved because of the food that they're eating, which is pretty crazy. The rate of metabolic diseases went down, so things like diabetes, type 1 and 2, although type 2 is a lot more common in pets. My brain's blanking on the other kinds. Crohn's disease is actually quite common in pets that eat kibble. Addison's disease, also a common one. They got less ear infections. And I've had a client that I talked to said, my dog used to get ear infections, every other week, and it was really bad because her ears are floppy and she has curly hair. She traps a lot of moisture near her ears. And as soon as she switched to raw, within a week, her dog got no more ear infections. And especially in floppy ear dogs, but because the kibble is so high in starch and carbohydrates, it's actually feeding the growth of that bacteria in the ear. Less dental issues, because the many raw foods have a bone content in them. You don't want it any higher than 10 because your dog may have digestive issues with it, and you want to make sure it's really, really, really small. So they ground it up nice and fine. But it actually helps prevent dental issues, because the raw chewing and grinding of the meat actually cleans their teeth and kills the bacteria around their gum line, while eating kibble and starch is basically like eating McDonald's French fries and then not brushing your teeth, because all the salt and the sugar just sits there. Lower rates of obesity, cancer, and skin issues. Obesity shouldn't be surprising, because if you switch from eating fast food to healthy food, your body will adjust accordingly. Skin issues, because starch and carbohydrates lead to a weakened immune system, which often presents as skin issues because the body's trying to expel all that extra salt and sugar. They also reported higher rates of energy, which, especially in lethargic dogs, that's a really good sign. Some people don't want that in their puppies because they're already hyper enough and you don't want all that extra energy. But the earlier you start them, the longer their health benefits will last. Kai only has to go to the vet once a year for her titer test, unless she has a digestive upset or something, and I give her something for her parasites. If she gets them, she really doesn't go to the vet, and that often saves a lot of money, which I can put towards her food. The animals are more hydrated. Obviously, wet food has more moisture in it than dry food. So raw food, typically, you'll notice that your animal's coat is healthier, their skin is not as dry and flaky, but all of these things are because there's more moisture in their diet. And digestion was the last one, because again, it's like digesting McDonald's French fries every day for your whole life, and then all of a sudden switching to, salads and, healthy proteins and all of that kind of stuff. But those are some of the key points for raw feeders. I know a lot of raw feeders, and I know a lot of people who have transitioned, and I haven't seen any bad results so far of people who have switched over. But if you have questions about raw food or you want to talk about it some more, feel free to send me a message. I do, again, have a presentation, which I'm hoping to do sometime soon. I just have to find a place, time, and set it all up. But I'm still in between Reiki 1 and 2 right now because I'm teaching again in a couple of weeks, so trying to focus on that for now. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and next week we're going to talk about reactivity, and I'm really excited about it. So I hope you tune in because I have opinions about reactivity, leash reactivity, and things like that. Enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you next week.